Hello and welcome inside episode 14 of the That Movie Is Ours Now podcast. My name is David Sugarman. If it's your first time here, it is really nice to meet you. Thanks for stopping by. And if you're coming back, it's really good to see you again. Before we dive in, all the fun stuff. Like, rate, review, subscribe. If you like what you hear, it helps other people hopefully like what they hear and help find the podcast wherever you're watching or listening to this. And this is the episode for you if you love classic cinema, if you love old Hollywood, the golden age, and whatever other phrases we might be able to throw around. Because I'm speaking with Harry Marks, who runs the account on TikTok. Let's all go to the lobby. He is at Lobby Intros, and his account is not just a love letter to old Hollywood, but also dives into so many interesting subjects, whether it be the Hollywood blacklist. There's lots of love letters to Turner Classic Movies, and we talk a lot about that. His love for classic cinema being birthed because, in a lot of ways, of Turner Classic Movies and his Turner Classic Movies style intros to a lot of classic films, which get you excited, interested in a lot of films that you might not otherwise know if you're of a certain generation. And I don't say that to be condescending because I'm of that generation. I don't want to give away any more because I really enjoyed this conversation. As you'll hear off the top, Harry's really cool right off the bat because he's a New Jersey guy. He's from New Jersey. I am originally from New Jersey. So that's where our discussion starts. This is episode 14 of the That Movie Is Ours Now. Is Ours Now? There we go. The That Movie Is Ours Now podcast with Harry Marks. And here he is, Harry Marks of Let's All Go to the Lobby, joining us here on That Movie Is Ours Now. Harry, what's going on? Thanks for joining me today.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Right off the bat, we just talked about this before we came on. A fellow New Jerseyan, I saw your video the other day talking about how New Jersey is the home of the real original Hollywood. Best
Right.
film based out of New Jersey. Give people some New Jersey love.
Best film based out of New Jersey. So we're not talking just filmed in New Jersey, but actually set in New Jersey.
Dealer's choice. You're the guest.
Let's see. Off the top of my head, I just recently watched Wrath of Becky, which
Okay.
is not set in New Jersey, but it was filmed at the Scotchwood Diner in Berkeley Heights, Scotch Plains area. Right on Route 22 there. So that one comes to mind. Not that it's the best, but it's just I saw the diner brighten, the sign right there, and I was like, oh my god, I ate there. Trying to think best movie set in New Jersey. Well, it should come as a surprise to a lot of people who are Batman fans that Gotham City is not based on New York City. It's based on Jersey City, New Jersey.
Really?
So
I didn't know that.
yeah, you could argue that Jersey City or any Batman film is the best representation of well, I wouldn't say the best representation of New Jersey, but it's the best New Jersey set film.
Love that. Yeah, if anything, it could reinforce some bad stereotypes, but it's kind of a cool one. Kind of
Yeah,
like the Sopranos. Like they don't always do things you're proud of, but like you're still
right.
proud of them.
That's what people don't get about New Jersey. We're not just the Sopranos and long highways and bumper to bumper traffic. We've got arboretums, we've got big garden areas, farms. Like we're the whole package.
I feel like I should be looking for an ad read for like New Jersey tourism.
New Jersey and you, perfect together.
So this is not a New Jersey podcast, but this is in your case all about classic films. You'd have all sorts of great series on your TikTok page talking about the Hollywood blacklist, talking about some of the just old classic films, doing Turner Classic Movie style intros. Clearly, you've done some love letters to Turner Classic Movies. Let's start at the beginning. Where did your love of not just movies, but classic movies of a certain era in the golden age of Hollywood, where was that really born?
That came from my parents, who always had TCM on somewhere in the house. Either my father was watching a Marx Brothers movie or my mom was watching a musical, but TCM was always on in the house. My grandfather was in the film Step Lively alongside Frank Sinatra. So we've always had this appreciation and this love for classic film.
Where I was gonna say, for people like, so I don't want to age you, but I'm a little bit younger. I was always sort of aware of Turner Classic Movies, but I don't think until I started diving actually like into movies and getting into them on an obsessive level that I
Mhm.
understand what it was. What is 30 seconds, what is Turner Classic Movies for someone who might not actually know what it is?
So Turner Classic Movies is a television channel on basic cable, though I do believe they're on they're part of the Max package as well. If you go into the
Mhm.
Max app, there's a TCM hub. Turner Classic Movies was started by Ted Turner of Turner Media as a way to showcase the classic films in the MGM library that he had acquired. So he was a huge fan of Gone with the Wind. It was his favorite film of all time. It was the first film that TCM ever aired, April 14th, 1994, and they have been a not just a a bastion of classic film history and education, but also preservation. A lot of classic films, not I wouldn't say a lot, but there have been a number of classic films over the years that have been preserved or restored with TCM's help. So they are very big on, you know, educating people on the history of classic films, bringing classic films to younger audiences, and just keeping the magic alive, so to speak, of classic film history. You know, it's funny on TikTok. I see a lot of, you know, movie talkers who talk about, you know, let's talk rank the films of Christopher Nolan, or the, you know, the films of
Sure.
Martin Scorsese. And I love Scorsese and I love Christopher Nolan, but you know, there are other directors that influence them. Let's talk about them, like George
Mm.
Cukor or Blake Edwards or Frank Capra. Like, let's talk about the directors who really built the grammar that today's directors speak, and built that language, and you know, preserve that history.
Say, going off that, I was going to save this question for towards the end, but since you brought it up, what is a movie that maybe has come out in let's say the last 10, even 20 years, that
Mhm.
reminds you of some of the older films that you love, that maybe if you like this, then maybe you should go and try X, Y, and Z and get into some classic things.
La La Land comes to mind. That's very
Sure.
reminiscent of not I wouldn't say all old musicals, because a lot of
Mhm.
them are very bombastic. But Chicago is a great love letter to the classic MGM musical, though it's a little grittier than most. There's this lovely independent film I absolutely love called The Station Agent. Stars Peter Dinklage and Bobby Cannavale, and it's one of those films that would have been de rigueur for classic film studios back in the day. Like, this would have been part of their thing that they did, but today you can't really do that because it wouldn't make any money. But it was just this really lovely little independent film set in New Jersey. Actually, there you go. Best movie set in New Jersey, The Station Agent. Um,
Perfect. Now
and
I'll,
it
I'll
was
put it to the watch list immediately.
Yeah, it's just a wonderful, small, tight little film, about a man who runs a toy train shop, who then inherits this actual train station, train depot, somewhere in the middle of East Bumblebutt, New Jersey, where he meets this food truck operator, played by Bobby Cannavale, and he starts falling for this woman who frequents the truck. It's a really lovely little film. You know, that kind of movie harkens back to the old days. And there's one more I was thinking of that sort of escaped me right now. It'll come to me at some point, but those two or three off the top of my head are modern ones that are reminiscent of old Hollywood, I think.
So let's take a step back. You do professional work within the storytelling and podcasting realm. You know, you write, you produce, you host. In terms of breaking into the film talk version, you know, of that community of it all, what made you say, God, I love all this stuff. I want to go put 5-part sort of mini documentaries together on TikTok. That's a leap. So
I
where did that come from?
I didn't go into this wanting to do that. My channel started as a love letter to Turner Classic Movies. I wanted to, because I noticed on TCM social channels they would post clips from various classic films, which is great. But my favorite part of the channel are the introductions that used to be done by Bob Osborne before he died, Ben Mankiewicz, Alicia Malone, Eddie Muller, and what they do, if you've never seen TCM, for anyone watching or listening, before the movies, almost all the movies that they air, someone introduces the film. They tell you about the film, who made it, what went into making it, some of the socio-political history about the time period in which it was made. And that's my favorite stuff. My favorite part of that channel is learning about these films, almost more than the films themselves. And so I wanted to do that on TikTok. I had started my channel a year ago, in January, excuse me, and I didn't know what I wanted to do with the channel. I started posting just random videos of myself, and I was like, this isn't it. Is not what I want this to be. And so it clicked for me as I was scrolling, and TCM comes across my For You page, and I was like, why aren't they putting their intros up? That's what I want to see. And then that was it. That I ran with that. And so the documentary stuff that I put up recently came about as a result of the writers and actors strike, because I wasn't going to talk about work from struck studios like Paramount or Universal or Fox. I needed to do something that was more, for lack of a better word, universal, and not dedicated to one studio, or talking, positively about those studios. And so that's when I really dove deep into the Hays Code, the Blacklist, the original WGA strikes from 1960. So that's where that came from.
One thing that you mentioned there that I wanted to focus on, I think we're all pretty aware that, like, maybe now more than ever, movies and pop culture are really mixed together. But I think in watching a bunch of your videos and getting ready for this, finding out how much of not just pop culture, but true history and American and even world history is ingrained in the development of film and Hollywood. What are some things that you in your research have found that even made you say, "Oh shit"?
So, for one, in doing the Blacklist documentary, one thing I wanted to learn about, not just for for the video, but for myself, was when you learn about the Blacklist, you figure, or you're told, Hollywood has always been at war with communism. America has always been at war with communism. It's almost like 1984. And I wanted to know why. What was it about communism that they opposed? And so the deeper I looked, it was really as simple as, because of the crash of 29, the Great Depression, workers, not just in Hollywood, but all over the country, realized that the capitalist system that they had been under the thumb of was not going to work for them. It was going to crush them. And those workers went and sought a different ideology where they were in control and not the rich elite bourgeoisie. And so the reason America started fighting communism in the first place was because they did not want the workers rising up out of their stations. If the workers rise up, the rich don't stay rich. So that's where that whole thing came from. It was never about making sure that Russia didn't take over America. The Soviets never called themselves communists. We did. We gave them that
Mm.
name. The Soviets were not communists. And so learning that shed a very big light on the way this country handles, any threat to the people at the top. And that was just eye-opening for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of it is just again so fascinating. I think it's very easy to sometimes again look at movies and look, movies are supposed to be silly and light, and sometimes keep them in that realm, but they can go much
Art
deeper.
art is inherently political. There's anytime someone says, "Oh, I miss movies that weren't about anything, that were just movies have never not been about something. Even you go far back, you've got Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, you've got um It's a Wonderful Life. I mean, It's a Wonderful Life was on several lists with the FBI for its anti-capitalist, pro-communist agenda, basically. Um, it's and what's funny is Mr. Potter, the staunch capitalist bad guy of the film, never gets his comeuppance. He gets away clean and free and wins at the end. But George Bailey always, he comes out at the end of that looking much better. But art has always been a political medium. It's how people have expressed themselves, in a way. Murals on the side of a wall, graffiti, any kind of artistic endeavor has always had a political underpinning.
Very well said, and maybe it's because I'm not personally. I haven't watched Christmas movies into the last few years because
Really?
I'm Jewish, and so it's not
Oh,
something
okay.
we watched a lot growing up. So I
Well, they were
still
all
need,
made by Jews, so
I do. There you go. I still need to watch. It's a Wonderful Life, but you've convinced me a little bit more to do so. I think Wonderful Life is a good place to start for the next question, though, because that is one that is like really well known even by like
mhm.
people today who aren't necessarily like movie buffs. I almost put really old classic films in a foreign film sense of a lot of people say, well, I would love to try, but I don't know where to start. And there's, it's black and white and maybe it's slower and the sound quality and the effects. There's a lot of excuses that someone might be able to find
Mhm.
So what are do you think a good few films that anybody can go and be like, hey, this is good. A good place to start. A few suggestions in the classic film genre that might not scare the casual viewer off.
So when we say classic, we have to sort of lay down a time cutoff. And I
Okay.
usually, we're already in 2023. So for me, that has been 1981. That from 1981 back is a classic film. Because the way I think about it, 1994 TCM aired, and the movies that they were showing were from the 50s and 40s, and you're talking 40, 50 years backwards.
Mhm.
So that's where I'm coming from. So you could say Evil Dead is a classic film. You could say I'm trying to think what else came out in like 1980, 1981. Apocalypse Now. That was the 70s. So that's there's a lot more classic films than just Citizen Kane and
Mhm.
you know Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. So, but to get people into classic films, musicals are a great way to start. I know not everybody is into musicals, but they're a really nice light way to start into it. So like The Music Man, West Side Story, though it's a little heavy. Um, and then if you want to go deeper into full on films, 12 Angry Men is just a nail biter
Mhm.
of a drama. It's very much like a play on film. So I'd start there. Casablanca, you can never go wrong with. I mean, it's a beautifully shot film. It's a beautifully acted film. And it is so historically important. And it's not a slow movie. It's a very surprisingly quick paced movie. Laura, film noir. I just watched it again the other day, and I forgot how fast that movie moves, despite being a film noir. It's a pretty quick pace. It goes at a good clip, and it's really exciting to watch. Like this whole thing play out of who killed this woman, and who's behind it, and what's going to happen next. Um, Citizen Kane is one of my favorites. It's not for everybody. It's kind of a slow burn. Um, but it ends up on a bunch of lists for a reason. The Birds is a great one. That's fun. Rope is a extremely tight thriller. Surprisingly, not considered one of Hitchcock's best, but Rope and Rear Window, if you're going to do Hitchcock, those are probably my two favorites.
You've listed a lot of really good ones, a lot for me to look into. I want to circle back on Citizen Kane.
Hmm.
I think it's one of the both funniest and most laziest things I always see on Letterboxd. One of the things my girlfriend and I will do, we'll watch a film and we'll immediately go read funny Letterboxd reviews. And so many of them, no matter what the movie, this is my Citizen Kane. Oh, Citizen Kane has nothing on this. It doesn't matter what the
Hmm.
film is. So let's actually talk about what makes Citizen Kane your Citizen Kane. What makes it so good for you?
So for me, Citizen Kane was a lot of different things going on at once. The climate in which it was made, you had Orson Welles who was going and Mankiewicz, the screenwriter, you had them going up against William Randolph Hearst, who was the head of the Hearst media empire, newspapers, radio. He was in charge of everything. And so he could craft the narrative of entire wars based on what he was publishing in his papers. And Wells is actually originally going to do an adaptation of Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad, and that didn't end up panning out. And so he was looking for his next white whale, so to speak, of a topic, and Hearst was who came to mind. So Mankiewicz I think Herman Mankiewicz writes the script. And Wells contributes a lot of it. He ends up taking credit at some point and then gives it back to Mank. But he writes the script amidst an atmosphere where he was being persecuted by Hearst's empire. Hearst, who had, I think it was Hedda Hopper, the tabloid radio and newspaper personality who reported on Hollywood. She was feeding Hearst information about the making of the film, and Wells, who had sort of holed himself up in the studio making the picture. It was such a tumultuous time for this to come out, because when it came out, Hearst told all the papers, don't run any reviews of it, don't talk about it. As far as we're concerned, this movie does not exist. We are going to sink this movie. They actually tried to buy the movie from RKO and quash it right there. That like no one would have seen this picture. Luckily, the head of RKO said, we're not going to sell this.
My goodness.
We're going to release this movie. And they threatened to out the heads of the studios, given the time, the atmosphere of the time with the Hays Code and people turning on the Jews, basically. They were going to out the Jewish heads of the studio to the public and say, like, these are the people who are corrupting the youth. These are the people who are ruining society. Go after them. And they stood their ground, and the film came out. But that's what it was made under, and that's what was going on at the time. On top of that, Wells was sort of revolutionizing the way films were made. There's one shot where Joseph Cotton and Wells are talking to each other. It's after Kane has won I think it was he was running for governor. It's been a while since I've seen it, but he's standing in the middle of the campaign office, and Wells needed to get the shot from a certain angle. He wanted Kane to loom high over the scenery, and he could not get the camera low enough. And so he literally broke the floorboards open and dug a hole into the studio to put the camera down into the hole to get the shot he wanted. And it was that kind of ingenuity and that kind of, like Spielberg making Jaws. It was that kind of work that made the movie what it was. So it's just like the way he made the movie, the climate in which the movie was made, all of that together has made it. There's a reason it was on AFI's top 100 list at the very top for so many years, because it is that good of a movie.
It's an incredible feat of filmmaking, and it makes you appreciate it more. I've only seen it once and very much fell into I appreciate it for what it is. I'm not sure. Maybe it's too old. And now I feel like it's at some point I'll have to circle back. And I think it's also hard sometimes it's hard going into a classic film when you've heard a lot, because there's an expectation. Sometimes it can be, it's like when someone tells you this is the best burger you've ever had, it doesn't matter if it is. Sometimes it can't live up to the hype. Harry, I don't want to take up much more of your time.
Oh, take up all my time. This is great. I love talking classic movies. I can talk for the next 6 hours. Let's do it.
Fair enough. Well, I can't. We already established before this. You stay up much later than me. It's past 9:30 here. I need to start getting ready for bed. Where are places though that people can find you, whether it be on TikTok? I know you're Let's All Go to the Lobby there. Where are you in other places? Where can people find your other work and podcasts and writing if people are interested?
So all my links are on my Linktree, linktr.ee/hcmarks. I'm Let's All Go to the Lobby on TikTok at Lobby Intros. I'm also Lobby Intros on Instagram. I also write for my day job. I write for the podcast company Grim and Mild, which makes the shows Lore and Cabinet of Curiosities. And so if you go to grimandmild.com, you can also listen to I write for Cabinet of Curiosities and Lore Legends, so you can listen to my work there as well.
Harry, thanks so much. This is fantastic, getting to spend some time, chop it up about some classic films with you. Been really interested to watch your stuff since the TikTok algorithm showed you to me a couple weeks ago, and great to connect with you and link up. Thanks for coming on. This has been another episode of the That Movie Is Ours Now podcast with Let's All Go to the Lobby host, Harry Marks.
Thank you.